Hi everyone, my name is Kathy. Welcome to Stand Up, Speak Out, Stop Domestic Violence. I have created this YouTube channel, a Facebook page, Instagram. I'm working on a website, getting my nonprofit all put together in an effort to raise awareness and educate people on the issue of domestic violence. Small disclosure here, I'm not a psychiatrist or a doctor or a counselor, not a lawyer. Any advice given here is based on my own personal experience and research, and the choice is entirely yours to follow the advice you find here or in any of my pages or from any of my followers, or to seek help at a domestic violence shelter or through an advocacy or an attorney. It's entirely up to you. This is me being an advocate for something that I've been struggling with for a long time, that I am a survivor of, and feel very strongly about raising awareness, breaking the cycle, ending the stigma, stopping the silence. Someone you know is being abused as we speak. Someone you love, probably. You may even think it's happening. You might even know it's happening, and there isn't anything you can do. Well, if you keep following me, I'm going to tell you the things that you can do, the ways that you can help. But first, I'm going to start with my story. And I do want to preface all of this with, this is my very first video. I am doing it on my phone. I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, how to edit, do makeup, hair, any of those things. God willing, blessing, somebody who has some clue what they're doing will step up and say, hey, by the way, I can help. Eventually I'm going to throw statistics at you and go through different cycles of abuse and share other people's stories. Some that may be private, some that are already in mainstream media. But in the meantime, this is mine. My life has been full of abuse. I've suffered abuse of one form of another since childhood. So I am statistically the ideal candidate for an abusive relationship. However, the statistics are wrong. There is no ideal candidate. Domestic violence happens in all age groups, all races, all religions, all financial brackets. There is not a single person out there who is not susceptible to domestic abuse. Don't fool yourself. The multi-gazillionaire down the street or the near homeless couple on the other end of town can both be suffering through the exact same thing behind closed doors. Me, I met the most amazing man in 2011, June, as a matter of fact. I met him through a mutual friend. He walked in the door. He was tall, dark, handsome, what I considered handsome anyway. Tall was like the most important part. I'm 5'8". I love to wear spike heels. He was nearly 7 feet tall. So there wasn't a pair of shoes I couldn't wear and not have him taller than me. He came in, I was instantly attracted to him. Just his charisma, his look, the way that he spoke. We spent the entire night sitting outside the club on the ground talking and laughing, interacting with other people, but mostly with ourselves. And the bar closed, and everybody left, and we were still sitting there talking and laughing. And we did things like that for weeks. We would go to Dairy Queen for ice cream at like 7 o'clock at night and sit at the picnic bench outside. And they would close at 11. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, we were still at the picnic bench talking and laughing. And about everything. He was smart, charismatic, charming, owned his own business, was very, very talented. He was uplifting. He told me all the good things about me. That I was beautiful, that I was intelligent, that there wasn't anything I couldn't do if I set my mind to it. Just your perfect person, you know? Everything that you want to hear, everything that you want to know, everything that you want right there in front of you. And of course, he shared his story, which was a history of some abuse, addiction, and a bad string of relationships in which he had been cheated on and lied about and things of that nature, which is actually a red flag. But for me at the time, after weeks of talking and my history with not the best relationship, not all abusive, some were good, just not lasting. It wasn't a red flag, it was just him sharing, because he shared really good stuff too. He has a really good relationship with the family that is not abusive. Sisters and mother and niece, bunch of a bunch of really good people that I became friends with, even though they weren't in the same state. We moved kind of quickly. The first time he kissed me was on July 4th. He showed up at my house out of the blue with a whole truckload of fireworks for me and my kids to light off. And on my street, they blocked off the whole road, and everyone let off like the best fireworks. And we used to just sit out there and kind of watch everybody with our little packs from Walmart. And not this year. This year we had big boomers and this giant monster man who was loud and boisterous and met everybody in the neighborhood in one night and played with my kids and helped my little one light firecrackers, even though I wasn't entirely happy with it. But, I tried to back off and be a good mom, because they're boys. Let boys do what they do. At the end of the night, he helped me clean. I got everybody into bed, and he helped me clean up the giant mess. And we sat outside and talked for a while. And before I went inside, he very gently, very slowly leaned in and kissed me flat on the mouth. And that was it. I was in love with him. Him. That man. In August, I think it was probably middle to the end of August, he moved in with us. He took over our garage as his place of business, because he had been working out of his trailer. And I was helping him and learning his trade, which in the end did benefit me, because after the relationship, to this day, I am still actively a carpenter, and I do love it. Technically disabled, so I can't do a lot of it. I can't pick up. We'll get into that later. I do it. I love it. I can't do as much of it, and I can't do it for work. Mostly I do it for fun and for fixing up my house and helping my friends. The first time that he made me cry Oh, I forgot to mention, he only drank beer. He had a problem with liquor, he told me. He did not like the way that liquor made him act, the person that he became when he was drinking liquor. So he only drank beer. And he never drove when he was drinking. He always called an Uber or a taxi or had a friend bring him home. He did not drive. And he did not drink liquor. So, flash forward. Not really sure. Maybe November. We were at a club that he had brought me to introduce me to people I had never been to before. It was late, probably about 10 o'clock in the evening. I was sitting beside him at the bar, and he ordered a shot. And I kind of looked at him and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I ordered a shot. Do you want one?" And I said, "But you told me that you don't drink liquor." He said, "Yeah, I know what I told you, but I feel like having a shot, so I'm going to have a shot." And so I asked the bartender to hold off on that for a minute so we could talk about it. And I don't even remember what he said to me, but he whipped around, and the face and the voice looking at me and talking to me was not someone that I recognized. And when he was through, I stood up and went to the ladies' room and cried for about 20 minutes. And when I came back out, he was about 3 shots in. It was not a good night. There was fighting. There was nastiness. A lot of ugly words. I pulled over on the way home in a parking lot, empty parking lot, because I wanted to talk about it. Like, what are you doing? What are we doing? What's happening? And he grabbed me by my throat with one hand, which wrapped nearly around my entire throat because he had huge hands. Has huge hands. And squeezed so hard that I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream, couldn't speak, couldn't move, and screamed in my face the most horrific things. And then he let me go, and he got out of the car and he walked away. And I regained my composure and I went after him. Don't know why. Don't ask me. I don't know. And we started fighting in front of someone's house. At this point, it's very late. They called the cops. And at one point, I had slipped and fallen in a puddle, of all things. And when the cop got there, despite the obvious, very red marks on my neck, which were obviously fingers and a hand, and the tears on my face, and the fact that I was covered in dirt and water, I was crying and near hysterical. And he was calm and cool and collected and charismatic. And he and the officer made friends. And then together they started making fun of me because it didn't look as if I had fallen down in a puddle. It looked as if I had peed myself. And maybe that was a problem. Maybe I had an incontinence problem. The cop sided with him, and they ganged up on me together. And they made me feel like less than nothing. Two days later, he disappeared, by the way. 2 days later, he showed up at the house with flowers and tears on his knees, crying. He's so sorry. It'll never happen again. He didn't mean it. He should know better than to drink liquor. All of the excuses. And of course, I forgave him. And he moved back in. Slowly but surely, he ostracized my family, my friends, isolated me. My mother was living with me. She moved out. my friends slowly stopped talking to me. Then on New Year's Eve, or I'm sorry, on Christmas, my kids came down and we were all there for Christmas, and he was on his best behavior. And on Christmas morning, he actually had purchased an engagement ring for me and gave it to me and asked me to marry him in front of my boys, all four of them. That's a pretty brave man. Three grown men and one pretty big one. And of course I said yes. Just love of my life. He was everything. My oldest son had to go back home before New Year's Eve. My other three and my abuser went camping for the weekend of New Year's Eve that year. My little one went to the car with him for something and got his hand caught in the door. And when he brought him back to me, he was crying. His hand was swollen and red. And I was trying to get him to keep it in the ice in the cooler. And as little ones are, he was fighting me because it hurts. And my abuser got very, very upset and started screaming at me to stop babying him and screaming at him to man up and all of these terrible things. And then, out of nowhere, he punched me in the back of the head really hard. And I was very drunk also. He had brought a bottle of Bacardi with him, and somehow in my brain I reasoned that if I drank a lot of it, then there wouldn't be a lot for him to drink. So I was drinking it, and I was pouring it out, and I was drinking it, and I was pouring it out. I was trying not to have him drink it. But apparently he was drinking elsewhere as well because he was still very intoxicated. Anyway, so he punched me in the back of my head. My second son saw this happen and attacked him. They were fighting. My abuser grabbed my son around his neck and started to strangle him. I stepped between them with my back to my son and my face to my abuser to get him to let him go. And successfully so. I don't remember very much of this. This is told back to me because of the amount of alcohol I had taken and probably from the hit on the back of the head. After I somehow managed to get them apart, they started fighting again, and then my son was on top of him, beating the hell out of him. And again, I stepped in between, and I got them apart. And finally, the fighting ended. And then my children were in their own tent, and we were in ours. And he somehow twisted it so that it was all my fault. And I spent probably an hour begging him for forgiveness, begging him to make love to me, to make up for it, begging him. All the while my children were within earshot. I mean, they weren't right next to us, but their tent wasn't far, and they could hear me apologizing, begging, and that pretty much destroyed them. Then we went to I had started a fantastic job. I was making crazy good money. I was so good at my job. And he kept, he started with little comments about how I was making money off of the work of other people. And how it wasn't anything that I was doing. It was what they were doing, and I was profiting from it. And basically I was a scumbag. Super Bowl came. We went to a party. A friend of ours was there, and she and I went into the bathroom because we hadn't seen each other for a while, and we were kind of chatting and catching up, and She's having problems with her new boyfriend. So, we were kind of just talking. And we were in there for a little bit. We came out, rejoined the party. And on the way home, he accused me of cheating on him with her in the bathroom of his friend's house in the middle of a huge Super Bowl party. And he beat the living hell out of me. I don't think there was a spot on my body that did not have a bruise or a cut of some kind. This stuff continued for a long time, a really long time. He started calling my children names, racial slurs, retard. My youngest is special needs. My middle two are mixed race, and my oldest is mixed religion. So he had a lot of ammunition. We moved into a house together that had a shop in the back of the property for him to work out of, his business. I lost my job when I showed up beaten and bruised after the Super Bowl, and I couldn't seem to pull myself together. And I lost a couple of accounts and didn't get any new ones. And I couldn't really go out in public visiting clients since my face looked more like a purple basketball than it did a face. So I was let go. So now we were renting a house, and I was relying on him completely and solely financially for work, for food, for rent, for bills, for everything. Even tampons. Like, nothing. There was nothing that I could have that he didn't give me. Which is the way he set it up and the way that he wanted it. They all do. Eventually we all get to this place. Then he got a job that was on the other side of the state. We fell behind in the rent. He wasn't paying. I didn't know at first. And when we went to the other side of the state, it was like a 2-month gig. I neglected to mention that during this entire time, 3.5 years, he was cheating on me. Like, almost from day one. With numerous partners. Like, any woman he saw. His exes. My friends. Anyway, so we went to the other side of the state, and it was a 2-month gig, and it was big money. And he told me that when he got back, he would catch up on the rent, all the bills, and everything would be fine. And to just, keep moving forward and keep the landlord at bay. And I did that. And he came back. And the night that he came back, he took the mattress out of our bedroom because I was not allowed to sleep in his bed because it was fat and filthy and disgusting, and he did not want me soiling his things. He literally took the mattress off the bed and put it outside. Then the very next day he packed everything and he left, and he never gave me a penny. And 5 days later, me, my kids, my animals were penniless and without a home. I had to send my kids to stay with my mom, and my animals, 2 dogs, 2 pit bulls, and I lived in a Jeep. And he called me to see how I was doing, and then offered me a place to stay in his shop, and money and a job, and I didn't have anywhere else to go. No one could help me. No one would help me. I think they were probably pretty tired of my crying wolf the amount of times that I did. They ended up staying with him in his shop for quite a few weeks. And one night, he was just tearing me apart with his words, like saying the most awful things. And I remember thinking as I was sitting there listening to him, could you just hit me already? It doesn't hurt as bad. I didn't have to think that for long, because he did. And then he picked me up and he threw me out the front door into the parking lot. And I sat there and I cried. And I thought about all of the things that he said to me. And how right he was. And how I really was nothing. And how the world and my children and him and everyone would be better off if I just wasn't there anymore. And I slit my arm from my wrist almost completely to my elbow. And I just sat there crying, watching it bleed, waiting for it to stop. Not bleeding, pain. Only then he caught me. And there was so much blood, I think it scared him. He dialed 911. And thankfully they came and they saved my life. And the only thing he had to say about it was that he didn't think he was special enough for anyone to want to kill themselves over. But he did come to the hospital. He came to visit me in the institution that they put me in. He and my mother were the only people who came to see me. And again, when I got out, I had nowhere to go. The apartment complex where my mother lived would not allow me to stay. They could not have another adult, and they would not allow the animals. They let my kids stay. I thank them for that every day. I thank my mom. So I ended up back there, and we got into another fight. And in the course of the fight, my bandage got ripped. My stitches got torn. And he called 911 and told them that I was trying to kill myself again. I called my mom. And my mom showed up right about the same time the cops did. And we had a bird. He was hurting the bird, which is how the whole fight started. And it ended up, even though I was hysterical, and he was his calm, cool, charismatic self, that the cops believed me and my mom this time. Which, by the way, this is like, I don't know, a dozen phone calls to the cops. Every single time they sided with him and left me alone with him to suffer the consequences for making the call, because I didn't suffer enough before making the call. And they took him to jail, and they gave me the bird, which eventually I had to give back to him, and he killed, just to spite me. And they got another one that looked just like him, named in the same name and everything. Then I found a little cottage in a trailer park. Well, it wasn't really a trailer park. It was like a retirement community. They were like manufactured homes and really nice RVs. And this particular one was like a little cottage. It was a 1-bedroom. It was very, very cute. I absolutely loved it. We had a pool and a pool table and shuffleboard, which I don't even know how to play, and tennis courts and people, and it was really nice. And my kids could see me there. They couldn't stay there, but they could, come do nights and stuff like that. And one of the rules was that you were quiet after a certain period of time. And I had one friend that I had started seeing. Actually, this is months later, and I was seeing someone, and he had a bit of a drug and alcohol problem too, but he was never violent with me. But he was kind of a jerk, and he caused a problem a couple of times, which got me in trouble. And then Junior showed up one night, and I told him he wanted to stay the night or something like that, and I said, no, we're not together anymore. I'm seeing someone else. I don't want to be with you anymore. And he got furious, and he left my cottage and got in his truck and did not wheelies, but it made a lot of noise, a hell of a lot of noise. Radio blaring, all the windows down, screeching the tires, beeping the horn, yelling out the window, around and around and around the complex, and using my name. So the next day I got evicted. Left me homeless twice in a 6-month period of time. Pretty special. Great guy. So it was actually the end of the relationship, finally. There are little things between then and now, but for the most part, for going on 8 years, I've been free of him, of the abuse. I am permanently scarred. I am permanently disabled. I have almost every neurological disorder you can think of: PTSD, anxiety, panic attacks, hallucinations, nightmares, all of it. You see the amazing, kind, gentle, smart, funny, talented man that I met, and I fell completely in love with, never existed. And very slowly, very calculatedly, if that's a word, manipulated me and molded me into exactly what he needed me to be to supply his addiction of attention, power. We can go into more of that in another video. So, I nearly died. I didn't. I'm lucky. A lot of men, women, and children do die. So, that's my story. I hope that you'll stand with me, that you'll speak out with me, and that you'll help me stop domestic violence, end the stigma, end the blaming of the victim, start the blaming of the abuser. And keep following me. I'm also on Facebook under the same name: Stand Up, Speak Out, Stop Domestic Abuse. Instagram, there will be a website, hopefully in the not too distant future, a shelter of a unique sort that I've been working on for many years. And if you need help, or if you know somebody who needs help, please reach out to me. There are resources on my pages. There will be more information coming. Like I said, this is brand new. I think I'm on day 3. So bear with me. It will get better. I'm already better. I've got a ways to go, but I'm getting there. And if you're suffering right now, if you're in it right now, you can get out. You can get better. You can live again. And it's amazing on the other side. I love you all. Thanks for watching.